The Spanish Civil War started in 1936, but the story started in 1814. In 1814, there was a king named Ferdinando VII. He rejected the Constitution and killed anyone professing liberal ideas. In 1833, Ferdinando VII died and his daughter Isabella II took over. When Isabella II took over, her reign was troubled by civil strife and political instability, while she had a Bourbon monarchy. In 1839, Carlos were supporters of Don Carlos, and they were at war with the Spanish. It was called the First Carlist War, where General Espartero defeated the Carlists, and Don Carlos was exiled.
1843, General Esparto was the head of government. General Narvaez was the new general. The same year, to keep his army loyal, Narvaez created an oversupply of officers with an inflated budget, making it cast apart.
In 1868, the liberal generals Joan Prim and Francisco Serrano exiled Queen Isabella II and announced to overthrow the Bourbon monarchy. That same year, a provisional government was declared. In 1869, a constitutional monarchy was proclaimed. The Catholic Church is recognized as an official religion. The Cortes was the Parliament of Spain, and in 1870, the Cortes invited Amadou, first son of Victor Emmanuel, King of Italy, to assume the throne of Spain, but he could not control violence. Meanwhile, General Joan Prim was assassinated in the street. Then, Amadou I abdicated in 1873 because he could not control violence between the liberals and conservatives.
Then that same year, Spain became the first Republic of Spain, which only lasted less than a year when 3 Republican presidents resigned. Alicante and Cartagena declared themselves independent cantons.
In 1874, the Captain General of Madrid, Manuel Pavia, with his troops at his disposal, closed down the Cortes and sent the delegates home. General Serrano assumed presidency and formed a new government until General Martinez Campo begged his soldiers, issued an ultimatum establishing the monarchy. So Alfonso XII, the son of Isabella II, became king and established a new constitution. The Carlists were defeated in the Second Carlist War. Navarra and Basque countries secured for the government. Educational development. Northern provinces were under direct rule from Madrid. The government alternated between conservatives and liberals.
In November 1885, Alfonso XII died, but in May, Alfonso XII's wife, Maria Cristina, gave birth to Alfonso XIII, who was the future king.
In 1875, the Cuban Revolution began against the Spanish rule. The United States supported Cuba. February 1898, an American battleship named Maine blew up in Havana Harbor. As a result, the United States declared war on April 24, 1898. That war was called the Spanish-American War.
The U.S. took Morocco, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam. The Spanish military was humiliated, and the people of Spain were disgusted. Spain went from an all-powerful empire to being weak. In 1902, Alfonso XIII obtained his majority, which means he's become an adult.
In 1906, the army demanded and was granted by Alfonso XIII a law of jurisdiction that allowed to court-martial civilians who published or uttered unflattering or comic remarks about military life. In 1909, the working class took their anger out on the army and the church. The latter identified with the upper class. Barricades went up the streets and the ensuing clashes between the workers and the government forces became known as a tragic week.
About 120 people were killed, and 60 government buildings and churches were destroyed in the reckless campaign of the rioters.
Throughout 1909 to 1911, workers lived in crime, disease, infected slums, strong tobacco, purifying food, lots of begging, smallpox, typhus, and miners lived in bunkhouses. Disobedient miners locked in kennels. Children could see them through the cracks. Some even urinated or poured water on the prisoners. In 1914, World War I broke out. Spain was neutral, but it left inflation, and left-wing parties were pro-Allies and the right-wing were pro-Germans. During that time, there was 2 major trade unions, the Socialist General Union of Workers and the Anarchist National Confederation of Labor.
1917, the Russian Revolution was looked upon as the panacea of the working classes.
In 1918, the Russian Revolution was over. The communists won. There was economical depression and rising unemployment in Spain. In 1919 to 1923, the Spanish generals in Barcelona tried to make everyone happy with laws. Alfonso XIII was blamed for Spanish setbacks in Morocco in the Rif War. a military defeat at Anoa'i in 1921.
In 1923, there was a parliamentary investigation and the government went from a parliamentary monarchy to a military dictatorship. General Miguel Primo de Rivera took over the government, dissolved Cortes, and proclaimed himself dictator.
In 1925, Primo de Rivera's government achieved victory in Morocco, built public works, and stimulated tourism. Primo de Rivera modeled his government on that of Benito Mussolini in Italy. In 1927, his mounting budgets alienated many of his supporters. He went from loved to hated. In January 1930, he asked the military for a vote of confidence, and the results were disappointing. So he resigned and retired to Paris, dispensing with the dictatorship. In August 1930, Republican leaders, liberals, socialists, and Catalans met, and in the Pact of Sebastian, pledged to establish a constitutional republic. They won the support of the Catalan left. In 1931, Admiral Aznar, appointed by the king, took over. Before the elections, the Catholic Church says to vote liberal is a sin. Republican candidates were communists and atheists. On the 12th of April, 1931, the Second Republic's elections took place. Peasants who did not behave faced eviction and subsequent starvation. On April 14, 1931, 5 p.m., the flag of the Second Republic of Spain was raised, and shortly after, Nikito Alcala Zamora declared the Second Republic of Spain. Nikito Zamora, leader of Spain, was an Andalusian lawyer. He was Catholic. He was a large landowner, a former monarchist politician, and the leader of Provisional Republic government. Also, that same year, the Archbishop of Toledo, primate of the Spanish Church, Cardinal Segura, praised monarchy and was against the republic. He said that the republic were enemies of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. So, a crowd burnt down the church.
June 1931, elections for Cortes took place. The leftist liberals won again. The major goals of the government were to reduce the size of the army, bring it under civilian control, separate the church and state, and to modernize education.
1932, the elected mildly socialist Republican government had some problems. There were also different parties. Socialists were the Socialist Workers' Party, PSOE, beginning in 1879. The Anarchists, the Communists, beginning in 1919 following the Russian Revolution, and the Monarchists were Alfonso XIII's supporters. In 1933, the President Alcala Zamora dismissed Aznar from the cabinet. The Anarchists refused to vote. The Socialists did not want to cooperate with the government. In the Fallage, workers and students engaged in guerrilla warfare. 1934, a bill introduced by Gil Robles gave to all priests over the age of 40 pensions of 2/3 of their salary. 50,000 or so miners armed with guns and dynamite attacked Civil Guard barracks. In 1935, the conservative government fell.
In 1936, there was a military uprising scheduled to take place on Saturday, 18th July 1936, throughout Spain and Morocco territory.
But at 5 p.m., July 17th, 1936, the two sides of the Spanish Civil War were the Republicans, with Manuel Aznar as the president, consisting of socialist intellectuals, communists, anarchists, and many peasants, workers, middle class, officers, sailors, and they were all godless and atheists. They also got help by the USSR. And the other side was the nationalists, with Francisco Franco as the dictator, consist of landowners, industrialists, and Navy officers. They got help by Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Portugal. Their ideas were order, duty, obedience, and to eliminate political dissidents, to have the Nazi salute, and they were Christian. The Spanish Civil War officially started.
The Nationalists seized public buildings in Melilla, Ceuta, and Tetuan, arresting and shooting anyone who opposes them.
The next day, they conquered the Canary Islands. General Goded departed in a seaplane to lead the insurrection in Barcelona. General Pauna, with 6,000 Carlist troops, took command of the city and shot the head of the Civil Guard, who refused to join them. Within the next 24 hours, Salamanca and Burgos were captured by the Nationalists, while in Zaragoza, the capital of Aragon, resisted to the insurrection was by about 30,000, mostly unarmed CNT members were killed. Rebellion failed in Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Bilbao, and Malaga. President Aznar refused to believe it. He ignored and dismissed the warning signs about the war. Prime Minister Casares Quiroga panicked. General Goded planned to take Barcelona with 12,000 troops. The CNC and the FAI seized armies along with members of the POUM, the Socialists and Communists. The Republican won, and General Goded was shot after being tried. Eventually, on April 1st, 1939, the Nationalists won the war. About 500,000 people lost their lives during the Spanish Civil War. About 200,000 people were brutally killed in mob violence, torture, systematic killings, and other brutalities. Almost 7,000 were Catholic priests, monks, and nuns. Republican women were humiliated, raped, and shaved bald by the Nationalist troops. 500,000 people were rounded up and sent to concentration camps by 1940. A large number of prisoners were conscripted for forced labor or to fight in Franco's army or being tried by military courts. 100,000 people were killed after the war. All the Republicans were criticized and humiliated. The citizens that supported one side got killed by the other. They had no rights. This war was one of the first wars where civilians were actually killed. Places like Guernica got heavily bombed, and Picasso even made a painting about Guernica.